The latest news regarding the changes for the House of Lords proposed by Labour is that in the first term of a Labour Parliament, in the first 5 years of a Labour Parliament, Labour would abolish the hereditary peers sitting in the House of Lords. I think this is a mistake. This is going to give us a House of Lords which is entirely appointed, and that's the worst of both worlds. It's the worst of all worlds. And it will take time to further change that, and I'm not sure that the proposals put forward by Gordon Brown are necessarily better than what we have at the moment. The advantage of hereditary peers and the advantage of the House of Peers as we've got is that nobody in the House of Peers is looking for re-election. So there isn't an eye on the clock, and that allows people a little bit more leeway to say and do what they want, to act with conscience. I think the first thing that should be done in the House of Lords is to abolish the whips completely, to abolish even the concept of the whips, and possibly even to abolish the formal division of the chamber of the House of Lords into political parties. I think it should be a House of Lords which is non-partisan, which is entirely devoid of political colour, and one abandons one's party as one gets through the door. That the debates are on merit, and the votes are on the merit of the argument only. And I think that would lead to a significant improvement in the power of Lords, number one, and number two, it would preserve the thing that the Lords do best at the moment. In the absence of a decent debate in the House of Commons, there is a decent debate in the House of Lords. I often work while I've got Parliament TV playing in the background, and I find it very, very rewarding, significantly more rewarding to listen to the debates in the House of Lords than to listen to the sloganising and the guff going on in the House of Commons, because there's nothing of substance in the House of Commons that you can't read in the newspapers. The House of Commons is just a place to repeat the gossip that you've heard the day before, and for a few ministers to make sententious comments and pronouncements that have been leaked beforehand anyway. The House of Commons has become almost redundant because of the nature or the failure of debate. The House of Lords continues to uphold that tradition of good, informed discussion, but unfortunately is heavily weighted to majorities on one side or the other because of the number of Lords who are affiliated to political parties. That should stop. And that may well be enough to save the House of Lords in some form. I think Gordon Brown's proposal about a chamber for the devolved countries, to the devolved parliaments, is absolutely right. I think there should be something of that nature, but that is a third house. It's not something to replace the House of Lords. The House of Lords is there to pick up the legislation and the failures of the House of Commons, and at the moment it's doing a sterling job, but it's hampered by parliamentary convention that says that it has to bow to the power of the elected chamber. It has to bow to the House of Commons. If there are two elected chambers, there is a question about which chamber bows to which, and it's more likely that we're going to get even more stuck, and every single member sitting in the House of Lords and the House of Commons will be looking over their shoulder at their next election. That, I don't think, is a recipe for successful governance. It's a recipe for nodding at some concept of democracy But democracy is a convention, and it's an interpretation. And simply voting once every 5 years or whatever is not necessarily a recipe for democracy. What we need is debate, and parliamentary representation is insignificant unless it comes with debate. First we sort out the debate, then we sort out how we are represented in that debate. The other thing which I find so positive about the House of Lords is that any member of the public can write to any Lord, whereas we are constrained in the House of Commons and can only write to our MP. We can, of course, write to the Prime Minister, but we can't write directly to any minister, and we can't arrange a meeting with any minister, which I think is something that should change. And we should be able to make representation to ministers and to ministries, and certainly the gatekeeping approach by both civil servants and by our own constituency MPs needs to be seriously examined. Because at the moment, we are being ordinary citizens in this country, subjects of His Majesty, are being managed and effectively silenced when we want something. I have listened and listened and listened over the last few months to whistleblowers and to their frustrations and to the ways in which the government system and the courts have seemingly conspired to silence people who simply want to make a difference and want to call out what is wrong and want to ensure that it gets put right. Instead, they've had their own lives pulled into tatters simply because they spoke out. This cannot be right. This is not democracy. This is control and bullying.